And likewise, my sister, the Princess Royal, has been here numerous times. She goes everywhere in the world, and I can't.
A secret royal decision, a stunned nation, and a name nobody expected to hear. Sources close to the palace claim King Charles has made a shocking move that could completely reshape the future of the monarchy, placing James, Earl of Wessex, at the center of a royal succession bombshell.
So it meant a very great deal, Mr. Premier, to receive your generous invitation to come here myself.
Why would the king reportedly bypass more established figures for one of the youngest royals? What happened behind palace walls that led to this extraordinary moment? And why are insiders calling it the most surprising royal development in years? For years, James, Earl of Wessex, has occupied a unique position within the British royal family. Unlike some of his more prominent relatives, he has largely grown up away from the intense public spotlight that often follows members of the House of Windsor. Yet, in recent months, his name has begun appearing more frequently in discussions about the monarchy's future. What was once considered a distant possibility is now becoming a topic of genuine interest among royal watchers, constitutional experts, and members of the public alike. The reason is simple. The British monarchy is entering a period of significant transition. King Charles III ascended the throne after spending decades preparing for the role. His reign began at a moment when the institution was already facing major challenges. The royal family was adapting to the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. Public expectations were evolving, and questions about the long-term future of the monarchy were becoming more frequent. Since then, additional pressures have emerged, including health concerns affecting senior members of the family and the ongoing effort to maintain what King Charles has often described as a streamlined or slimmed-down monarchy. Against that backdrop, attention has naturally turned toward the next generation. Much of that attention has focused on Prince William and his family. As heir to the throne, William represents the monarchy's immediate future. However, constitutional historians often point out that successful monarchies do not rely on a single individual. They depend on a network of trusted family members who can support the institution during periods of change. That reality has led some observers to look beyond the most familiar royal figures and examine those who may play larger roles in the years ahead. Among them is James, Earl of Wessex. At first glance, the growing interest may seem surprising. James has spent most of his life outside the daily cycle of royal headlines. Unlike several older members of the family, he has not been the subject of constant media attention. He has not carried out a large number of official engagements, nor has he become a regular presence on international tours. Yet, that low profile may be exactly why some people believe he represents an important part of the monarchy's future. To understand why, it helps to look at the approach taken by his parents. Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, have long been viewed as two of the most dependable members of the royal family. Throughout periods of controversy and change, they have generally maintained a reputation for stability and professionalism. While other royal stories often dominated headlines, Edward and Sophie focused on public service, charity work, and supporting the crown without seeking excessive attention. When it came to raising their children, they reportedly made a deliberate effort to provide as normal an upbringing as possible. James and his sister, Lady Louise Windsor, were not pushed into highly public royal roles during childhood. Instead, they were encouraged to pursue their education and personal interests away from the constant pressures that can accompany royal life. Many commentators believe this decision helped shield them from some of the challenges experienced by previous generations of royals. As a result, James has entered adulthood with relatively little public baggage attached to his name. That matters more than it might appear. Modern monarchies increasingly depend on public trust. In an age of social media, constant news coverage, and intense public scrutiny, reputation has become one of the institution's most valuable assets. Younger members of the royal family are often viewed not only as individuals, but also as symbols of the monarchy's future direction. Because James has remained largely outside controversy, some royal observers see him as representing a fresh chapter. Of course, being viewed positively is not the same thing as being assigned major responsibilities. The British monarchy operates within a constitutional framework that has developed over centuries. Roles are determined by law, tradition, and practical necessity rather than public popularity alone. Still, conversations about future responsibilities have become increasingly relevant. One reason is the changing structure of the royal family itself. King Charles has spoken for many years about the benefits of a more focused monarchy. The idea was that a smaller group of working royals could carry out official duties more efficiently while reducing costs and increasing public accountability. Supporters argued that this approach would create a clearer and more modern institution. In practice, however, maintaining a smaller team presents challenges. Every working royal carries a significant workload. Official engagements, charity patronages, diplomatic events, and public appearances require substantial time and energy. When unforeseen circumstances arise, the pressure on remaining family members naturally increases. Recent years have highlighted that reality. Several senior royals have had to adjust their public schedules due to personal circumstances, while others no longer perform official duties. As a result, a relatively small group of individuals has been responsible for representing the crown across the United Kingdom and around the world. This situation has led some analysts to suggest that long-term planning is becoming more important than ever. Rather than focusing only on the immediate line of succession, attention is increasingly being directed toward younger royals who may eventually help support the institution. That is where James enters the conversation. While he remains young and has not yet assumed a major public role, he belongs to a generation that could help bridge the gap between today's monarchy and the one that exists decades from now. The discussion becomes even more interesting when viewed through the lens of King Charles's broader strategy. One of the most notable constitutional developments during his reign involved the expansion of the pool of counselors of state. These individuals can perform certain official functions on behalf of the monarch when necessary. Changes introduced in recent years added Princess Anne and Prince Edward to that group, reinforcing the available support structure around the crown. Although those changes did not involve James directly, they demonstrated an important principle. The monarchy is constantly preparing for contingencies. Planning for the future is not unusual. In fact, it is one of the institution's defining characteristics. Long before changes become visible to the public, discussions often take place regarding succession, responsibilities, and the long-term stability of the crown. That is why even relatively small developments can attract significant attention from royal observers. When younger royals begin appearing more frequently at family events, public ceremonies, or important occasions, questions naturally follow. Are they simply participating as family members, or are they gradually being introduced to a larger role? At present, there is no official indication that James has been selected for any extraordinary constitutional position. Nonetheless, speculation continues because of the broader context surrounding the monarchy. The institution is preparing for the future while simultaneously managing the demands of the present. No one understands those demands better than Prince William. As heir to the throne, William faces a unique challenge. He must support the current monarch while also preparing for his own eventual reign. That responsibility extends far beyond ceremonial appearances. It involves understanding the complexities of modern constitutional monarchy, maintaining public confidence, and ensuring that the institution remains relevant to future generations. For that reason, trusted allies will be essential. Historically, successful monarchs have relied on dependable family members who could share responsibilities and provide stability during difficult periods. The future reign of William will likely be no different. Many royal commentators therefore view younger relatives such as James not as competitors but as potential partners in maintaining the institution. From that perspective, the growing attention surrounding James becomes easier to understand. He represents something increasingly valuable to the monarchy: youth, continuity, and a relatively untarnished public image. Whether that eventually translates into a significant official role remains to be seen. Much will depend on his own choices, the needs of the institution, and decisions made by future generations of royal leadership. Yet one thing is becoming difficult to ignore. A few years ago, very few people outside dedicated royal circles were discussing James, Earl of Wessex. Today, his name is appearing with greater frequency whenever conversations turn to the monarchy's long-term future. That shift alone tells us something important. The British royal family is entering a new phase. The transition may be gradual, and many of the key decisions may happen behind closed doors, but preparations for the future are already underway. And as those preparations continue, a fascinating question is beginning to emerge. Is James simply another young member of the royal family finding his place in public life? Or could he be quietly becoming one of the most important figures in the monarchy's next generation? For now, there is no definitive answer. But as interest continues to grow and speculation intensifies, more people are beginning to wonder whether King Charles sees a future for James that extends far beyond what anyone expected just a few years ago. Here's part 2 of the script, continuing naturally from part 1 while maintaining a neutral, fact-based tone and avoiding unsupported claims. As discussions about the future of the monarchy continue, one reality stands out above all others. The British royal family is operating with a smaller group of active representatives than at almost any point in recent history. This change did not happen overnight. It has been the result of years of gradual transformation, driven by retirements, shifting public expectations, personal decisions, and the natural passage of time. For King Charles, managing that reality is one of the most important challenges of his reign. The modern monarchy is expected to perform a remarkable balancing act. It must preserve centuries of tradition while remaining relevant to a rapidly changing society. It must project stability while adapting to unexpected developments. Most importantly, it must continue functioning effectively regardless of which individuals currently occupy its most visible positions. That requirement explains why succession planning has always been such a central part of royal life. Many people think of succession simply in terms of who becomes king or queen next. In reality, the process is much broader. A successful monarchy depends on an entire support structure. Senior royals attend thousands of engagements, represent the crown at official events, support charitable organizations, and act as ambassadors for the United Kingdom both at home and abroad. When the number of active participants decreases, the workload does not disappear. Instead, it is distributed among those who remain. This has become increasingly apparent over the past several years. Princess Anne continues to maintain one of the busiest schedules in the royal family. Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, have taken on additional responsibilities. Prince William's public role has expanded significantly as he prepares for his future as king. Even so, observers frequently note that the institution faces growing pressure to ensure that enough capable individuals are available to support its work in the decades ahead. This is one reason why younger members of the family are attracting increased attention. Every public appearance by a younger royal tends to generate discussion about what role they may eventually play. Such conversations are not limited to James, Earl of Wessex, but his situation is particularly interesting because of how rapidly perceptions around him appear to be changing. For most of his life, James has remained largely outside public debate. Today, however, some royal commentators are asking whether that period of relative anonymity may actually prove beneficial. The argument is straightforward. Unlike many senior royals who have spent decades under intense scrutiny, James enters adulthood with the opportunity to define his public identity from the beginning. He is not burdened by years of political controversy or media battles. Instead, he has the chance to develop gradually while learning from both the successes and challenges experienced by earlier generations. That possibility has fueled growing speculation about his future. At the center of much of that speculation is a concept that often generates confusion among the public: the role of a regent. The word itself carries enormous historical significance. Throughout British history, regencies have occurred when a monarch was unable to carry out their duties due to age, illness, or other exceptional circumstances. In such cases, a regent may perform constitutional functions on behalf of the crown until the monarch can resume their responsibilities, or until another constitutional solution is reached. Importantly, these arrangements are governed by law rather than personal preference. The modern framework is based on legislation that carefully defines who may serve and under what circumstances. This is why the recent online discussions involving James have attracted attention. The suggestion that a younger royal could one day be considered for an important constitutional role raises questions not only about individual family members but also about the future structure of the monarchy itself. To be clear, there is currently no public evidence that King Charles intends to create a new regency role for James or grant him any special constitutional title. Nevertheless, speculation continues because it touches on broader concerns about succession planning and long-term stability. In many ways, the discussion says less about James personally and more about how people view the future of the institution. Supporters of a greater role for younger royals often argue that the monarchy must prepare decades in advance. They point out that successful transitions rarely happen by accident. Future leaders need time to gain experience, understand public expectations, and learn how the institution operates. Others take a more cautious view. They note that experience remains one of the monarchy's most valuable assets. Senior royals have spent decades navigating complex political, diplomatic, and social situations. Their knowledge cannot be replaced overnight. From this perspective, responsibility should continue to rest primarily with those who have already demonstrated their ability to manage demanding public roles. The existence of these differing viewpoints reflects a larger debate about the monarchy's future direction. Should it continue becoming smaller and more focused? Or will circumstances eventually require a broader team of working royals? King Charles has long favored efficiency and modernization. His vision has consistently emphasized a streamlined institution capable of carrying out its duties without unnecessary complexity. Yet even supporters of this approach acknowledge that every organization requires a pipeline of future talent. No institution can depend entirely on its current leadership. Eventually, new individuals must step forward. That reality inevitably brings attention back to James and other younger members of the royal family. What makes James particularly intriguing is that he occupies a middle ground between the monarchy's present and its future. He is young enough to represent the next generation, but old enough to begin attracting serious discussion about potential responsibilities. Whether he ultimately chooses a highly public role remains unknown. Historically, members of the royal family have sometimes followed very different paths, despite sharing similar backgrounds. Some embrace public duties enthusiastically. Others prefer private careers and more limited involvement with official responsibilities. For now, James appears to be navigating that decision carefully. At the same time, King Charles is undoubtedly thinking about the legacy he wishes to leave behind. Every monarch is remembered not only for the events that occurred during their reign, but also for the condition in which they leave the institution for their successor. Queen Elizabeth II is often credited with providing continuity during a period of enormous social change. Her reign spanned generations, and her dedication helped preserve public confidence in the crown through numerous challenges. King Charles faces a different task. Rather than overseeing decades of gradual change, he has inherited a monarchy already in transition. Public expectations are evolving rapidly. Media coverage is more intense than ever. Younger generations often view institutions differently than their parents and grandparents did. As a result, Charles' legacy may depend heavily on how successfully he prepares the monarchy for the future reign of Prince William. That preparation extends beyond constitutional matters. It includes identifying reliable individuals who can support the institution over the long term. It involves ensuring that future generations understand the responsibilities associated with royal service. And it requires building a framework capable of adapting to changing circumstances while preserving essential traditions. Viewed through that lens, the growing interest in James becomes easier to understand. People are not simply discussing one young royal. They are discussing what the monarchy may look like 20 or 30 years from now. Will it continue operating with a very small core team? Will additional family members gradually assume greater responsibilities? Could entirely new approaches emerge as future generations redefine what royal service means? No one can answer those questions with certainty. What is clear, however, is that the conversation itself reflects the changing nature of the institution. A generation ago, few people would have paid close attention to someone in James' position. Today, every appearance, every public engagement, and every sign of increased visibility is analyzed for clues about the future. That level of interest highlights how closely the public follows the evolution of the monarchy. It also explains why speculation surrounding James continues to gain momentum despite the absence of any official announcement. The truth is that much of the discussion remains hypothetical. There has been no confirmation of extraordinary constitutional plans. No official declaration has transformed James into a central figure within the monarchy's leadership structure. The existing line of succession remains clear, and the constitutional framework governing the crown remains firmly in place. Yet speculation often emerges when institutions are undergoing change. People naturally search for signs of what comes next. They look for individuals who may represent future stability. They examine the decisions of current leaders and attempt to understand their long-term vision. In that environment, James has become a symbol of possibility. For some, he represents continuity. For others, he represents renewal. And for many observers, he represents a reminder that the future of the monarchy will ultimately depend on a new generation stepping forward when the time comes. As King Charles continues shaping his reign, that future remains a work in progress. The decisions made today may not reveal their full significance for many years. Relationships will evolve. Responsibilities will change. New challenges will emerge. Through it all, the monarchy will continue doing what it has done for centuries, adapting to changing circumstances while attempting to preserve a sense of continuity. And perhaps that is why the conversation surrounding James, Earl of Wessex, has captured so much attention. Not because of any single title or rumored role, but because he has come to represent a larger question facing the House of Windsor. When the next chapter of royal history is written, who will be trusted to help guide the institution forward? At the moment, no one outside the palace can answer that question with certainty. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. As the monarchy looks beyond the challenges of the present and toward the opportunities of the future, James is no longer being viewed simply as a distant member of the royal family. He is becoming part of a much larger conversation about what the British monarchy may eventually become.